Hello and welcome to the Know Your Ancestors podcast. I am Megan Hillier, and I'm excited that you're here today. I took a bit of a break off of December for the podcast, but we are back. And there's some exciting things in the works, and I'm excited for you to hear. I have a great guest podcast that's going to come out next week, and then another one I'm going to be recording soon. Anyways, exciting things happening here. So this podcast, what we're really about here is understanding how our ancestor stories continue through us. It's not just about learning the facts, learning the history of our ancestors, but learning the context, like learning what their life might have actually been like and how that's affecting us today, what patterns are being passed through our family. And it's about knowing your ancestors so that you can better understand yourself. Give yourself a bit more compassion, or other family members more compassion, as you understand maybe where some of these patterns and things have originated. So there's a limitation as we do genealogy to records alone. Like records, they can tell us what happened, when and where someone was born, where they were married, where they lived, that sort of thing. But they rarely tell us how it felt, like what our ancestors were actually thinking when this thing happened, what was sacrificed, or what pain or resilience was carried forward. Some of these more nuanced ideas are felt or understood in maybe less conventional ways. You might learn something about an ancestor and feel an understanding that isn't recorded. Our ancestors are still close, and their presence can help us understand. I've had this in my own life. Clients have felt this before, that as they start piecing together the clues and the story of their ancestors, they start to understand more about who they were and kind of get a glimpse into what their life was like and what things they might have felt, what trauma they might have experienced. But it's not really a cut and dry exact science, right? And not everyone wants to go there. Most people, most genealogists, they just want to learn the facts, right? They want to learn where their ancestors came from, what their occupations were, maybe what they, how many children they had, where they immigrated from and why, the history of the area, that sort of thing. I'd say the majority of genealogists, that's their whole point, right? Is just to understand the facts, understand where they came from. But what I do here is a little deeper than that. We can explore more about the why, more about the how, more about the consequences of our ancestors' lives, and more about the connection that we can have to our ancestors now, because our ancestors are still around us. They can still help us. We can draw strength and guidance and support from our ancestors. And when we learn about them and learn their story and consider what their experiences were like and how those experiences have been passed down, that can help us in our lives now. So I'm going to talk a bit about that today. So maybe your ancestor was a farmer on the plains of North Dakota. We might learn that they were married, had 6 children, and that we descend from that 6th child. And through looking deeper, you might see that our great-grandmother was pregnant with our grandfather, that 6th child, when her 5-year-old died of influenza. So typical genealogy would just stop at those facts, right? That our great-grandmother was pregnant, had our grandfather, her 5-year-old died at the time that she was pregnant. Typical genealogy might not even get that much information. They might just see that 5-year-old died, right? A lot of times we don't even look at, was the mother pregnant at that time or anything like that, right? But that is how we can go deeper with our genealogy. We look at those facts in a different way and understand things in a more in-depth way. So through epigenetics, we know that trauma can affect the way that genes are expressed. Okay, we've heard about that. Generational inheritance, generational trauma, that sort of thing. What happened to your great-grandmother when she was pregnant with your grandfather likely affected her traumatically, right? I think we can all agree that having a child die would be a very traumatic event. Now, we don't know for sure or how things might have been affected, but it's very likely that something changed biologically, genetically, the way that her genes were expressed in order to cope with that trauma. Now, when someone is in the womb, their development, their genetic makeup, their genetic expression can also be affected as well through that trauma. So we don't know exactly what that might have looked like or what the consequences of that are. Was she able to heal from that as this child was developing in her womb? Likely not. Like, there were chores to be done, 4 other mouths to feed. So how might that have affected your grandfather who she was pregnant with at that time? Can you see how that pain has been passed on? Or maybe your great grandmother was able to work through it. And maybe how your great grandparents raised your grandfather showed resilience and ability to feel the pain and to process it and to move on and to overcome that hardship. So you can see how it's not an exact thing. We can't say, well, this happened, so therefore these patterns developed, and that's why my grandfather was the way that he was. We don't know for sure, right? But as we learn about this individually, how you learn about these things through genealogy research, you can start to develop an understanding and a connection and a relationship with your ancestors that have passed on. So this is why when I work with clients, we meet together to share what I find so that we can contemplate what may have been inherited and what pain, resilience, wisdom, or strength has been passed on to us. It's really a discussion about understanding and seeing the patterns or seeing the origin and the development of these sort of experiences in your family line. So I want to tell you a bit of a real life example of this kind of looking at our ancestors' lives in a way that helps us in our own lives today. Now, I'm lucky enough to have a lot of information about my family, about my ancestors, and I was reading over an interview of my grandmother that someone interviewed her. They transcribed it, and I was reading this interview. It's about my grandmother's life, about her upbringing, about her parents and siblings and where they moved around to and her own children and husband and all of that sort of thing. And as I was reading it, I wasn't looking at just the facts, but I was looking at her personality in there. Now, I understand that most of the time when we're doing genealogy, we don't have that information, right? That we're kind of just making assumptions based on the facts. So it's really quite a special thing to be able to have her words and her feelings. And some of the questions that the interviewer asked her was asked about what kind of things she wanted to do or what kind of things she wished she would have done. And one of those was traveling. She wishes that she would have been able to travel more. By the time that her and her husband were at retirement age, his health was really not well. It was very hard for him to get around. He really liked her to stay at home with him. One of the questions was if you had a day all to yourself that you could do anything you wanted, you didn't have to worry about anyone else, what would you do? And her answers were quite simple. She wanted to go shopping. She wanted to be able to go out to the store, maybe go to lunch with some friends. Knowing my grandma, I remember how giving she was, how selfless she was, how she wanted to make sure everyone else was taken care of, and to hear this little bit of her desires to go and have fun and to go explore and do things as simple as just going out shopping and looking at things, getting a bite to eat with friends like that. It honestly made me a little bit sad that she felt like she couldn't do those things because she felt responsible for taking care of her family. And as I was reading about this, I was thinking about my own life. I have people in my family that I need to take care of, and it can be very easy to fall into that role and to do that role as good as you can, as my grandma did, and to sometimes forget that you are a person too, that you have a life too, and that it's okay to do those things that you desire and that you want to do to experience life. So it kind of gave me permission or a push to do that. And as I was considering it later on in the day after I had read that biography of her, I felt like it was almost as if she inspired this desire of me to read her biography. I don't even know how I got to her page or what, but I found it on Family Search and just started reading it. And at first I kind of skimmed through it, and then I went through and read all of it, because I just felt this desire to learn more about her and to learn about how her life was. I feel like there's a lot of similarities between her and me. So it was almost as if she was giving me a glimpse into a choice, I guess. A choice of I could live life like her, which wasn't bad. She had a good life, or I could ensure that I can do those things that I desire and that I have been put on earth to do without huge detriment to my family. There are goals and aspirations that I have, and that it's okay to have that those are God-given desires that I have. And so, I don't know, that's kind of maybe a weird example to include as like a genealogy lesson here, but I feel like our ancestors are around us. Our grandparents are around us, and they lived their life. They had experiences, they had setbacks, they had failures, they had joys and blessings, and we can learn from those. They can help us see those things that they have learned, that can help us maybe have some guidance, some strength, and some understanding in our lives today. So maybe you don't have a biography like I do of my grandmother, but maybe you have some pieces of information. Maybe you know that she was a nurse before she got married, or maybe you know that she had 2 children pass away as infants. And you can consider what her life might have been like. And I feel like as you kind of tap into this other realm of genealogy, you can feel a connection. You can feel a connection with these ancestors. You can feel guidance from them. You can feel their wisdom and their strength. So if you're feeling like you want to begin this journey to really understand and connect to your ancestors, maybe you already have a very full family tree. You already know a lot of details about your ancestors, but you want to integrate those details in a more deep and involved and supportive way. I invite you to do an origin initiation with me. So this is the first place where research begins, where context is gathered and direction emerges. So it's not about answers yet, it's about listening and seeing what things show up and what tendrils you can follow as you connect to your ancestors and really feel of their strength and power. And notice where your own experiences might be echoing something older, something ancient, something deep inside of us that has been passed down through the generations, where curiosity is asking for your time. This is not a hurried way of researching. It's not a way of just filling in the gaps in your family tree so that you have all the information as far back as you can go. It's about really looking at who these people were and are that you come from. So if you would like to go deeper and start this journey, I invite you to sign up for an origin initiation with me. And you can sign up by going to knowyourancestors.co/origin, and we can get started. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. We have so much more exciting things coming up. I'm really looking forward to sharing the interview that I have that I'm going to be sharing next week. So stay tuned for that, and we have more to come. So thanks again for being here, and we will see you next time.